Jurassic Park, a must watch for anyone who's liked anything related to dinosaurs, whether it be part 1, 2 or 3. It is mandatory to at least watch one. 2 islands filled with bioengineered dinosaurs that can outsmart humans trained in the field, and messed up experiments that despise our race with every fiber in their beings. It's pretty safe to say that it's not safe on Isla Nublar or Isla Sorna. But you gotta wonder how well the Jurassic franchise compares to some of the time periods in the past on the danger scale. Is the Jurassic franchise in its entirety more deadly than the most dangerous time period in the past? Most people probably think I'm gonna mention the Cretaceous or a specific location like the Hell Creek Formation, but no. Sure, the Cretaceous had a bunch of dangerous things. As a matter of fact, the largest land predators ever to exist lived during the Cretaceous. Giganotosaurus, Carcharodontosaurus, T-Rex are just a few. But none of these lived in the same continent and lived during different stages of the Cretaceous. Sure, in the late Cretaceous, the Hell Creek Formation was home to the most powerful land carnivore to ever exist. But that's just about it. Apart from that, you don't even have to worry about the Docoraptor and getting picked up by a plane-sized pterosaur, so then what could possibly be worse? Enter the Late Jurassic. When it comes to dinosaur time periods, I don't think there's a high density of so many different species of theropod in the same area. Like I said, most have 2 or at max 3 apex predators in the same continent during a specific period. But the Late Jurassic in North America is pure nightmare fuel. Only thing that could rival it I think would be the Late Cretaceous Sea, also known as Hell's Aquarium. So then on to the main question. If you were to be dropped in North America during the Late Jurassic or either of the 2 parks, which would you be more likely to survive in? And the answer is closer than you think, so let's get right into it. And just before we do me a favor and hit that subscribe button for me. It's the only way I could afford a sub sandwich. Okay, that was a lie, but it still would mean a lot if you could. There's also a Discord in the description below for you guys to join. There's different events you can take part in, or you can just chill and talk about anything prehistoric. I'm honestly surprised at just how many members we have now. The more the merrier. With promotion dealt with, on with the analysis. For this video I'm going to be comparing North America and the Late Jurassic, and both Sorna and Nublar as a whole. The Late Jurassic was proof that nature could be more benevolent than man. Because what was this? There was not only a good amount of large predators during that time, but they were not too far apart. As you leave one theropod's territory, you enter another's. So if you were somehow transported to the Late Jurassic as a corporal punishment for not giving the sock a break, could you realistically survive for 7 days? Well, let's see. If you were unlucky enough to be put in the dry season, your odds are going to drastically be reduced. You're going to need to find water, perhaps a watering hole or a dried up riverbed. And while you're doing that, every other thing in the area is going to be doing the same. And not all of them are going to be there just for water. When it comes to herbivores, a lot are going to be bigger than you, and are actually going to be as dangerous as the carnivores in some cases. Yeah, despite what the Jurassic franchise depicts, for most herbivores, real ones won't let you just come up next to them and pet them. Like the Lost World, your biggest op in this sense is probably going to be the Stegosaurus. There were different species but all weighed over 4 tons and could turn you into a kebab very easily. Today some herbivores are very territorial, even guarding an entire water source for themselves sometimes, not letting predators or even other herbivores drink. Hippos are one such example, elephants too. Sometimes in the midst of the dry season they will hog an entire water source for themselves and chase everything else away. I'm not saying Stegosaurus is like that because we have no real way of knowing, but they do have the ability to be aggressive and territorial. These things will associate you with a theropod because of your stance and your fingers, which looks like claws to them. Sure, there were a few bipedal herbivores, but they've never seen nothing that looks like you before, and although they were not quite as dumb as some parts of the media would have you think, they still did have very primitive brains, so they're gonna see you as a threat. So while you walk up next to it thinking you're safe because it's a herbivore, it's gonna impale you with those thagomizers. Sauropods are the same too. Things like Diplodocus and Brachiosaurus probably won't pay much attention to you because of just how small you are in comparison, but if you push your luck you're gonna end up flatter than an IHOP pancake. But let's say you're not an idiot and give the herbivores their space. You should be fine, right? Nope, not in the slightest. Get ready to be in the sights of every single theropod over 300 kilograms. It's not just a single species you have to worry about, but also the subspecies within them as well. Of course we have our main protagonist, the Allosaurus. Not so bad until you realize there's Fragilis, Saurophaganax, which is now reclassified as Allosaurus anax, and possibly even Epentherias. But I'm not too confident on that one. Aside from them, you're going to be dealing with the North American subspecies of Torvosaurus, which is the biggest one, weighing more than 4 tons. And lastly, the thing you'd probably have to watch out for the most, Ceratosaurus. While there's technically 3 species, most research now points to them being only 2, because 2 out of the 3 may just be the same species but at a different growth stage. The largest can approach a ton and the smallest are still 3 times heavier than the average person. You may be saying X-Rad, alright, that's not so bad. Jurassic Park has a T-Rex, Spinosaurus, human-sized raptors, hybrids, etc, etc. Yes, you're right, but I have one thing to counter that: population size and species density. Yes, Jurassic Park did have more species compared to the late Jurassic that could kill you, but they top out to like what, 30? Maybe 40 max? And just to be clear, I'm talking about the number of individuals on the islands, not the species, because I don't think there are more than 10 different species of theropod there. Or I could be wrong. After the Indominus died and the park was abandoned, there was a Rex, Red, 2 Scorpius Rexes, a Barry trio, a Carnivores, and a few others. But they topped out at around 30 max, and there were a few buildings you could hide in. Not only are you going to have to deal with these different species of Jurassic carnivores in a similar area, but there's no human intervention to put a dent in their population. They would be spread out. Before humans started hunting tigers, their population was estimated to be more than 100,000 all across Asia. Not really a good animal to compare dinosaurs with, because some theropods could have clutches of more than 10 eggs. Nowhere as close as the 50 plus eggs of some herbivores, but still a lot. Compared to the 4 babies tigers have in some rare occasions, it sure is a lot. I am aware that most of these hatchlings will be picked off before they reach adulthood, but with the possibility of more than 1 million different species of these theropods across the country breeding, your chances of not running into one are slim to none. Allosaurus fragilis is going to be the most common despite being one of the bigger ones, even outnumbering Ceratosaurus. The lower estimates give this animal a top speed of around 17 miles per hour, while higher ones place it above 22, which is kinda believable since it isn't as bulky or nearly as heavy as the megatheropods. So unless you're in the 1% that could run faster than 60 miles per hour, you're cooked. The same thing goes for the Ceratosaurus. They did live in more swampy areas or areas with more water to avoid direct competition with the larger theropods, but they certainly would test their luck and venture outside of there if the opportunity of an easy meal arises. The Torvo and Anax are the largest of these carnivores and probably cap out at around 15 miles per hour or maybe even a bit faster. This still is faster than the majority, but for a few of you who can outrun them, then you're in luck. One problem though, unlike the movies, you're likely not going to hear or see them before an attack happens, especially if you leave the plains and enter the conifer forest for shade, which is an area literally built for ambush. While the largest of these theropods would stay in the plains, they do venture into the forest, whether it be for food or simply patrolling territory. So, with everything I've told you, how many of these Morrison carnivores should be within a 5-mile radius of you? Well, the number is a terrifying 7 or a little more. Most large carnivores have massive territories that act as barriers to members of their own species and other carnivores, with males often having territories overlapping 2 or more females. The same would likely apply here. 1 or 2 Torvos and Anax, and about 2 Ceratos. Note, these things patrol more than 5 miles every day, so you're likely gonna have an 85% chance of coming into contact with at least one during your 7 days. But this gets worse given that it's the dry season. If there is one big known area of water that's still the only source of hydration for miles, a lot of these carnivores won't care about personal space and will likely gather to capitalize on so many herbivores in one relatively small location. And during periods like this, 15 or more of these animals could end up being in close proximity with one another. The same thing happens all the time today, with leopards, lions, hyenas, tigers, bears, etc. etc. Predators of the same or different species tend to congregate to a similar area where most of the prey or food is, which leads to conflict and in some cases death. You also have smaller but still potentially dangerous carnivores like the, oh, we're gonna have a field day with this one, Tanicolagrius. You know what, it's the thing from Jurassic World the game. Anyway, you're gonna have to deal with that, and with them being so much smaller than the big theropods, their numbers would likely be higher, and these things are more than 250 pounds, so you shouldn't be a lot of trouble to bring down. Hold on though, the Morrison has other animals to worry about. This one is kinda speculative, but biting insects were in fact present in the late Jurassic. There was even a prehistoric water bug discovered that lived in the same period. Mosquitoes were also there, but what I don't know is if they could transmit as much disease as they do today. But there's a chance that they could spread at least one, and if they do, then getting an infection at this time is almost certain death. But like I said, that's kinda just speculative. Overall, your week in the Jurassic is gonna suck, and that's considering you make it past 3 days without any shelter, food, or clean water. And of course the dinosaurs. I've talked about which of the 2 islands are more deadly before, Sorna or Nublar. And almost everyone agreed that Sorna is worse because even though it has less species diversity, the multiple human tracking raptor packs spread across the island and the Spinosaurus that can track people from any part of the map makes it just that bit more deadly. Plus there's no shelter that isn't guarded by the said raptors. Your only hope would be to find an upturned truck like Eric. To be honest, this is what gave Sorna the edge, because on Nublar there's at least hotels you can hide in. If you manage to survive the dinosaurs, that is. When it comes to survivability, your chances are pretty low for both islands, especially if you're dropped in the center of the jungle. On Nublar, you're faced with a rogue Rex, Tarbosaurus, packs of Monolophosaurus, a Carnotaurus that has beef with children, and crash-out hybrids that can clone themselves unless killed. What makes Nublar different than the Morrison is that there's more predator diversity, and these ones for whatever reason will pursue a person much longer than a normal predator. They put their own lives at risk sometimes to kill a person, which is not what a real animal would do, since if you can't hunt another day or get seriously hurt, that's basically a wrap, and wasting so much energy is not optimal. But at least in Nublar, if you manage to make it into the main center, you should be okay, since you can lock the doors, ration food and water, and make it to day 7 until you get picked up by whoever put you in this unholy situation in the first place. You won't have that luxury in Sorna. There isn't as much different predators, but the numbers are still up there. Since most of these dinosaurs broke loose, they spread out and bred, with the raptors being the main culprits. The Jurassic Park 3 raptors are definitely contenders for the smartest animals in the entire franchise, with only the Indominus or Indoraptor being contenders. They set traps for people and act purely malicious in some cases. There's also the Jurassic Park Ceratosaurus, which is bigger than the real one, but if you cover yourself in poop, you should be fine, I guess, unless it's really hungry. That one made me laugh. Lastly, we have the biggest crash out yet, Acid 87. No real megaceropod comes close when it comes to tracking like this thing, or at least when it comes to tracking humans. This massive animal was able to pinpoint exactly where the main casts were on the map, no matter where they went. That's some dedication no real theropod could ever have. They just accept you as a prey item that escaped and move on to something else that comes along. As I've said in previous videos covering similar topics, the invertebrates here can kill you. There's the Brazilian wandering spider, which is possibly the most venomous spider on the planet, as well as Chagas disease spreading assassin bugs and mosquitoes that can spread many different diseases. On Nublar, if you're lucky, you can find shelter and some infrastructure if you get sick. But on Sorna, you may have to go in a hollow tree or take your chance in the abandoned labs that are patrolled by the raptors. So yeah, Sorna is definitely the more dangerous island. But the question is, which is more dangerous, the parks or the late Jurassic? To be very honest, I'm going to have to give it to the Jurassic franchise. Look, I said that the late Jurassic likely had more than 1 million of these mid to top predators, but that's spread out over the entirety of North America. If it's in the dry season, you might have about more than 15 of these menaces within miles of you depending on where you are. But Nublar is canonically only 30 miles. But given the scale of everything we've seen in Camp Cretaceous, I might bump that up to 60. And within this space there were a bunch of different carnivores on the island. Some weren't even shown on screen. With that in mind, the fact that there is a chance that you could make it to a safe spot if you're careful and a bit lucky, would make it tied with the late Jurassic. There obviously isn't any shelter in the late Jurassic. It's either the plains or the woodlands. It's not even as though you could climb a tree and wait it out, because conifers were the main trees found at the time, and the other tree species likely did not have branches to support your weight. So, if you climb up and fell because of a broken branch, that's either instant death or breaking a leg depending on how high you fall. The carnivores, while not being quite as packed together as in Nublar, would still be constantly patrolling these areas, so unless for 7 nights straight you find somewhere in the ground to sleep and don't get killed by something while snoozing, you're pretty much a goner, because you can't stay awake for 7 days. At day 4 you start going insane and make stupid decisions. However, Sorna is what gives the franchise the edge. It's similar to the late Jurassic when it comes to shelter. I mean, you could sleep in a tree, but unlike what Jurassic Park showed, you're gonna get a crap bitten out of you by mosquitoes, so you might be tempted to sleep in the abandoned laboratory, which will likely end up with you running into a raptor, or you get extremely lucky like Eric and find an upturned truck. The predators on both islands are also so much more motivated to hunt humans than the normal animals. We've seen some willing to tank explosions and break down gates just to kill something that wouldn't make up for even half the energy they lost trying to catch it. I will admit that it is very close, but the two islands as a whole just take the edge when it comes to the danger level. But let me know what you guys think. Would you be worse off in the late Jurassic, or are the islands in the franchise more dangerous? Let me know in the comments. So that's gonna be it for this one, folks. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video.